It is showtime.
Showtime! What's up, wrestling fans? Two Bros Wrestling Show coming. Yeah, that's right. We're the Two Bros Wrestling Show. I forgot who we were.
Yeah, well, that's
Showtime.
because last week, Doug, we were the Two Bros Wrestling Awards show for
Ah,
our first show of the
yes.
year. So that's
Yes.
easily to get confused. If you didn't see last week's show, we had a fun one. So you will definitely want to make sure you check out who we give our accolades to, match of the year, all that good stuff for 2025. But Doug, tonight we're not looking
Tonight.
back; we're looking forward,
Forward, my brother. Forward.
forward into 2026, and what is a huge week for TNA, the biggest they have had in more than a decade. And so, in honor of to get everyone excited, we are going to talk about this promotion that will just not die as it gets ready to have yet another life, and maybe its biggest life yet. We're going to go through all the eras of TNA. So I guess we are looking back a little bit, but talking about how the promotion that from the get go everyone said would never make it has managed to make it 20 some years
Uh-huh.
and get ready to take it to a new level.
Yeah, I really think that the Phoenix meme is appropriate for TNA because so many times this little company has been on the verge of extinction, yet to just rise from the ashes.
They've been called dead from the start, and here they are.
Hmm.
So we're going to look at all that, and you'll want to stick around because Doug and I uh, put ourselves to the test. Very hard to do. At the end, we're going to talk about the top five talents in the history of TNA, people that made their name in total nonstop action. You'll want to debate that one with us, I'm sure.
I'm sure. But first,
It's the first opening bell of 2026. We didn't do any news last week where we did
nope.
nothing but hand out awards. So for our first news segment of 2026, we're going to go back to probably what was the biggest story that occurred while we were out, and that is newly revealed documents and text messages that showed Endeavor executives back in
Oh no.
2023 were very confident that Vince McMahon was
Hmm.
going to return and sell to them, which is, of course, a prediction that came true. The documents were part of a WWE shareholder lawsuit. More on that in a minute. But one of the documents was a text message from Mark Shapiro, who is a higher up at Endeavor, now heads up TKO, said that he was telling other executives that Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon were going to take over WWE for 9 months, and then Vince would return and get a new board in there and sell WWE to Endeavor, which shockingly is exactly what happened. Um, well, not exactly, I guess. Vince came back 6 months later, so he beat the prediction by 3 months, but still, um, it's pretty interesting that it was sort of in the bag or seems to be in the bag.
It
Uh,
seems to be even with all those people straight up voting against him.
yeah, they were very confident.
Yet,
Oh, don't worry, it's only going to be 9 months. Vince is coming back. He'll get a new board, and we're going to be in business.
Mhm.
Also interesting, if you heard this part of it, Doug, a revelation regards creative. And McMahon had
Mhm.
apparently texted Khan about creative in February of 2023. So mark that date on the calendar. Look at that, because at the time in this text, 2023, February, he's asking if Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes were aware of, quote, new creative for WrestleMania that year, as well as the year after. Uh,
Mhm.
Noting that he had asked that same question of both Triple H and Bruce Pritchard. It's important to note that during this time, Nick Khan was going around making public statements saying Vince McMahon is not involved at all in WWE creative, which obviously, during his exile, this runs counter to what the documents show.
Of course, Vince wasn't involved in it at all because he'd already arranged it all. He didn't need to be involved. He'd already set it up.
This could be something that we'll need to follow. So part B, that back to that lawsuit that
Right.
is where all these documents are coming from. So shareholders have brought a suit that claimed that Vince McMahon was in violation of his fiduciary duties by arranging for WWE to merge with UFC to create TKO. They say that this move was done to keep Vince in power rather than to get the best deal for WWE shareholders. And of course, a lot of these document dumps do seem to indicate that a lot of what occurred in 2023 may have already been in the bag. And so they may have a case if they can prove that this was all a charade just to keep Vince in power and to get him to sell to Endeavor, which was apparently something that, according to some of these documents, may not have been as a competitive a process as they try to make it look. So more to come. This could be a bombshell. This could be a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Another big story that we spoke of back in December before we went on hiatus was the WWE content library. As we reported at the time, WWE was set to leave Peacock, which it has, as of December 31st. And as of this past week now, though, what we didn't know at the time that we do know now is that the library is available domestically on Netflix. Not everything has been moved. If you're looking for WCW, the territories, NXT, no luck, but all the major WWE PLEs or pay-per-views as they once were called are now available for the price of your Netflix subscription and on all the tiers of Netflix for subscribers. We'll keep you informed if we hear or learn about the territories or the NXT. Some of that stuff may be going elsewhere or just being used on the YouTube Vault channels that WWE is running. Here's a weird one, Doug. Have you heard any news about Izzy Dame?
No.
So Izzy Dame can't play volleyball in the Mediterranean.
I hate that, I guess.
So you're recently, actually this week, she was crowned the new women's North American champion. Things have been going pretty well for her, but she has been hit with a 10-year ban from playing pro volleyball in Cyprus. So for background, before she went to WWE, Dame was living in the Mediterranean playing professional volleyball. She had just signed a new contract during the offseason when WWE reached out and recruited her. Wrestling wasn't even on her radar at the time. She thought that was a opportunity she should pursue. Therefore, she reneged on her volleyball contract, which has resulted in a ban. Twist of this is it turns out her father was actually her coach and her manager.
So first of all, maybe this shows my sports ball ignorance, but I didn't know there was a thing as professional volleyball.
Yeah, especially in other countries.
Okay,
I
cool.
think it's bigger in other countries than it is here. But obviously, she's the new North American champion. She's looking pretty good. Things have worked out pretty well. She said she couldn't care less about the ban. Accusations of being a part-timer can no longer be levied against Logan Paul. The Vision member and social media star has announced he is in wrestling for the long haul and has in fact signed a new long-term deal. No word on the length of this contract. And then to bring our opening bell to an end, we had a lot of comings and goings while we were off to update you on. So let's just do a quick run through. First, if you've noticed, hey, am I watching Raw and SmackDown or am I watching NXT? You're not alone. There has been a slew of NXT call-ups to the main roster. That includes Jordan Grace, Trick Williams, Obafemi, Javon Evans. Others are being rumored to join them. This is a large influx of talent, so let's hope no one gets lost in the shuffle. But obviously, there's been a bottleneck. These folks have been main roster ready for a long time. So if you are not watching NXT or familiar with these talents from their work elsewhere or on the NXT brand, you are in for a treat. And hopefully they get to show what exactly they can do. Not all positive NXT news, though. Brinley Reese has been with WWE for 3 years, injured much of that time. She's announced she's leaving NXT. Just not in the cards for her. Not going to sign a new contract. Needs to go get well. And WWE isn't the only one, though, who is dealing with some folks leaving. Fightful Select have reported that Matt Taven and Alex Abrahantes are no longer with AEW. Mercedes Martinez is gone from AEW also. She's announced her retirement. And then finally, as a way of a segue, I think this one works, Madison Rayne has announced her retirement after 20-year career. Obviously, this is the the biggest news as far as the comings and goings because of how long Madison has been in the world of wrestling. She's still going to continue her work backstage. She works in AEW as a coach, but if you don't watch Ring of Honor, she still was talent occasionally in Ring of Honor, but she has hung it up. Majority of her career obviously was made in TNA, which is why this is a good segue. She joined TNA in 2008, became a member of the Beautiful People. She joined with Angelina and Velvet Sky. She was a 5-time Knockouts champion, a 3-time Knockouts tag team champion. Doug, I love Madison Rayne. Good luck to her. And gosh, the Beautiful People. That is, I'm sure we're going to get into the Beautiful People here in our main event.
Yeah, I'm sure we are.
Which let's go ahead and do it, man.
Let's do it. Let's
TNA,
do it.
The promotion that would not die, is getting ready this Thursday to make a huge move to AMC for Thursday Night Impact. It's amazing that in 2026, this is happening to a company that from day one has been pronounced dead on arrival, and yet here they are.
Here they are.
We're going to go through the different eras of TNA, talk about what Doug and I thought of those eras and what was going on at the time. So let's set the stage. WWE wins the Monday Night War. WCW is gone in 2001. For those of us like Doug and I who grew up with territories and then the Monday Night War, there was always alternatives.
Always.
And then suddenly there was one until TNA came along. Jerry Jarrett, who was a territory promoter, very successful in the territory days, worked behind the scenes during the Monday Night Wars, was just a lifer of a wrestling behind the scenes guy. His son, you may recognize that name also. Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff and Jerry started TNA. McMahon at the time, Vince, was very, very famously not a fan of Jeff Jarrett. When he purchased WCW, he made a show of, we're not keeping Jarrett's contract. So for Jeff Jarrett, it was obvious that he needed to find something else to do because the only show in town wasn't going to have anything to do with him. His dad had a lot of experience. They put together what was called NWA TNA. This was 2002, the Asylum era in Nashville. Doug, do you remember what the original TV was for the original TNA?
So are we talking about like when TNA first, because wasn't TNA originally just pay-per-views, right? Didn't they start off with a pay-per-view model?
Yes.
Yeah, and I know that like super cheap, like if my research is right here, like they did the WWE Network deal with $9.95 weekly pay-per-views, right?
Yes. And I know that might seem strange to fans now, and $9.95 for a month would be one thing. But if you talk 2002, spending $10 every week to watch a wrestling show, that's the model they started with. So right from the start, folks are like, there's no way in the world people are going to pay $10 every Wednesday to watch a wrestling show. They tried to get traditional television. You have to put yourself back in 2002 though, because this was the time before streaming and before, indie promotions were using YouTube so successfully. At the time, if you didn't have TV, you didn't have anything. That's essentially what killed WCW, is that there were people willing to buy the company, but without TV, they thought the company was worth nothing. So off goes Jeff and Jerry Jarrett to have a weekly pay-per-view from the TNA Asylum in Nashville. Doug, I think there was a couple times they offered them for 99 cents just to try to get people to watch. I watched a few then. Did you watch any during the Asylum era?
I did not see anything during their pay-per-view era. No, they were completely off my radar. I think maybe I'd heard about them, but immediately discounted it because it involved Jeff Jarrett. I mean, that's so bad of me to say, but I think there was that. Oh, it's Jarrett. Yeah. No, why? The bit of stigma there, but yeah.
I think it is fair to say. Because when you first hear, hey, it's Jeff Jarrett who WWE doesn't want, he and his dad are doing weekly pay-per-views. Right from the start, it's like, this isn't going to work. This will never work. I remember thinking that.
Yeah, of course, my first question is, I think probably like what a lot of others thought at the time, how long before Jarrett's champion? If it's him and his dad running the promotion,
Well, there was a lot of that.
right?
That definitely happened. And again, right from the start, people thought it was going to be dead. But for 2 years, they managed to piece together talent like AJ Styles, Samoa Joe,
Hmm.
all the best guys from the Indies.
Yes.
And they started with a cult following. They started some innovative things with the X division, at a time that WWE was doing next to nothing with cruiserweights any longer. So they did try to differentiate themselves, but about 2 years into this era, they finally got TV. And I don't want to speak for you, Doug. You can tell me if this is true for you, but I think this is when I started. They had a very, very brief run, not even a year, on
No,
Fox Sports.
Fox. Yes. Yes.
And
I
that's
think
when we began watching.
yeah, because you clued me in. Hey, we can watch this. We can watch it now. There's
Yeah.
this thing, and it might be actually pretty good, even if it does involve Jeff Jarrett.
And it was at least an alternative, and it was nice
Hmm.
to have something that was accessible again that we could watch. But I can't say I was heavily invested during that era. It just
Right.
was okay, let's see what this is. um, but then I think this is probably what most folks are going to consider as the breakout era of TNA, and it might be the only era where it didn't look like they were about to shut the doors, and that was
Hmm.
the Spike TV
Yep.
breakout era that started in 2005 to
Hmm.
2009.
Yep.
TNA Impact was as exciting a show as was on TV at the time for wrestling. WWE was, I think, a lot of folks loved the Attitude Era, obviously, but there were a lot of
Hmm.
people who thought Vince lost touch during this era. And actually having someone doing something different over on Spike TV, sometimes TNA was a more innovative looking show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Spike TV got them into so many homes too,
Yeah,
and they had like, I mean, I think very much gone were the days when a wrestling program could draw like 8, 9 million viewers, but at their highlight, it looks like during the Spike TV era, especially close to like the end of the Spike TV era, they were in like a million and a half homes weekly, or I'm sorry, they were in they had like a million and a half viewers weekly,
which is
which is good
crazy.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, it was a huge jump, obviously, in visibility from Fox Sports. The production
Yeah.
quality was better too. Doug, you and I actually saw several TNA shows back in the day, including
Hmm.
uh, TV
The old
product down
Fox.
where they filmed. Yeah, we went and
Yeah,
watched
the
them
old
film TNA
Fox.
Impact.
Yes, down in Orlando, the old Fox show. Of course, now Orlando, home of NXT. But
Well, yeah, it's funny. At the time, people thought
yeah.
that trying to have it in the same spot and building every week was, again, that's never going to work. And now
Hmm.
we don't blink when WWE is doing it
Right.
for NXT or Evolve,
Yeah.
both. Um, this is also when it became more viable for WWE stars that weren't, and I don't mean to be dismissive of people, but they are.
No.
There was a time you go, oh, it's the washed up guys that are there. This is when
Hmm.
Kurt Angle's there. This is when Christian Cage is there. This is when Booker T was there. When Sting came out of retirement for not wanting to work with Vince at the time. And
Hmm.
so at the time, you also had a tag team renaissance, Beer Money, Motor City Machine Guns, LAX. I think in some ways, and if you feel differently, tell me. But at the time, I still felt like, okay, this is still mostly guys who can't make it in WWE and some indie guys.
But,
But
but
you look back in time and you go,
yes,
man, we were dismissive. And this was actually a golden era of wrestling happening on Spike TV in not WWE in TNA. That roster is
hmm
ridiculous now that you go back and look at it.
that roster is ridiculous. Absolutely. And you talk about Angle coming over. Angle was the first to pull the Moxley before Moxley pulled the Angle, I guess.
That's
Because
true.
because Angle would made it over to what ECW after WWE had acquired it and decided, oh, I'm going to take some time away, Vince. And then he shows up on TNA. Very much like Mox did, with like, no, I'm just going to go away for a while. Oh wait, no, I'm going to show up over on AEW.
And as
Um,
if to show that we have the kind of talent that can run with a Kurt Angle, do you remember that first like real big feud he had with Samoa Joe?
dude, dude, that was the first TNA pay per view. I was like, I'm in. I have to see Angle versus Joe, and
Yeah, yeah, and it did not
classic.
disappoint in any
Not at
way.
all. I don't even remember
Um,
anything else on the card that night, but Angle, Joe,
and I'm sure they probably built around those, but I'm sure they did some X
hmm
division. I'm sure they
oh
did some
yeah,
tag team, some things. Again,
hmm
these were things that WWE has always been hot and cold with tag team. And when you have guys like Motor City, LAX, and Beer Money going around, I guarantee you that the WWE product at the time probably didn't have that many young at that time and athletic, exciting tag teams as what TNA was,
and
featured.
speaking of young, exciting tag teams, let's not forget, Generation Me
No,
that had their time
yeah,
in TNA too. The Bucks were there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it is funny when you go back and realize who all actually was in TNA back when we were all
hmm
dismissing TNA as being a WWE wannabe or WWE castoffs or just a Jeff Jarrett vanity promotion that was levied against TNA at the time.
But really,
Not
I
that
mean,
there was some truth to some of that.
there was some truth to it, but how much excitement was there though? Like in 2010, like that first show, in January 2010, where everything changed. They even briefly move to like Monday nights because they were going straight to war. They were going to reignite the Monday Night War, and of course, who better than most of the NWO? I think because you had Bischoff, you had Hogan.
There we
I'm
go.
pretty sure, yeah, Nash. You
So
got
that
Bish.
actually that's a great segue into what probably is the next era because that Spike
Yeah,
TV is the breakout era, 2005, 2009. But the era that you're starting to talk about, that was when Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff were given creative control. When they were given creative control, things changed. And it did sort of spark a different era of
yeah,
TNA. Probably that early Spike TV era was when you had the most fan goodwill and the most creative
hmm
momentum. When
yeah.
Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff started calling the shots, you were right. It was looking like the old, like they're just going to retread all the NW. They're going to take all their friends and things that they were doing in WCW and just fast forward 10 years and do it
hmm
again or try to do it
Yeah.
again. So they definitely started a increased focus on older stars at the expense of the X division and the homegrown talent. Um, and that Monday
The
Night
go-
War did not go so very well.
No, no. I mean, they had this cool, innovative ring, that six-sided ring. The first thing Hogan and Bischoff do is that, nope, that's got to go. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, that was one of the. Uh, it's been like a hallmark of TNA in the past, and then for them to just go in and say, okay, yeah, it's got to go. No, dude, come on, that's a cool ring. It's a cool concept.
Did you continue to watch during the Hogan Bischoff era and the Monday Night
Oh,
War
you,
attempt?
you know, I was all in. Was Flair there? Because we had the Fortune Four, the like the or it wasn't the Four Horsemen. They had to do it differently, I think, or something like that.
For copyright
there
reasons,
was
there was
there, yeah, they couldn't do the Four Horsemen. They had to drop another finger and pop up a thumb, I think.
Do
But
you remember when they did the Monday night, like first we're going head to head? Do you remember what Vince countered with? I'll give the old man credit on this one. Do you remember what he did on Raw?
I do. I think the thing that blew my mind. I'm thinking that by the end of that TNA, that what really was mind blowing to me was, I think that was the night Jeff Hardy showed up. I think, but I don't remember what Vince countered with.
He countered with Heartbreak Kid and Bret Hart face to
Oh,
face
oh,
for the
yes.
first time since the Montreal Screwjob
The,
to have a heartfelt, like unscripted
oh,
on. Yeah, he brought him face to face to do for Sean to do the
And
apology things. I mean,
that
you can't get bigger than that. I'm sorry
you really can't.
yeah.
No, that wasn't even clicking with me that that because that seems just like a few years ago, but
No, we're talking,
wow,
yeah,
that's
16,
like just
16
six.
years ago.
Yeah,
That was
wow.
2010-ish. Hogan and Bischoff were in charge for around 3 years that they had total creative control. This I continued to watch also. I would, they would occasionally still tour in our area and things. We would
Mm-hmm.
go watch them live. They did start to lose some of their unique identity. You're right. The ring went.
Mm-hmm.
The younger stars were pushed back down. It was the dying days of WCW all over again. Emphasis on dying days because this is when everyone thought, well, Hogan and Bischoff, they gave them creative control. The management doesn't know what they're doing. They're going to run these guys into the ground. This is the end of TNA.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like it in some ways. There
It
was fan backlash, and the ratings took a huge nosedive, huge nosedive.
yeah.
And this is when they lost, their mainstream access. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you go after the Hogan era, uh, this is kind of when I start to check out, and it wasn't always
Same.
by choice. It was sometimes by I
I
can't
can't
watch them
find them.
anymore. Yeah, I can't find
Yeah.
them anymore. So the 2014 to 2016 period might have been the very tail end of when I watched
Mm-hmm.
TNA. So that's why it's kind of exciting to be like 10 years after the fact that they're going to be popping back on our radars again. But this was sort of a reset era, a creative reset. They reduced the reliance on aging legends. They started focusing on their in-ring quality. They started looking internationally to sign talent. But this is when you started getting like, the second coming, after
Mm-hmm.
his WWE run. This is when Bobby Lashley was like making his,
Bobby.
EC3, Drew
Mm-hmm.
Galloway, the Hardys,
Yeah.
and they started having really strong partnerships with Ring of Honor, AAA, New Japan. So this is when TNA, they don't get credit for it because WWE did it during the pandemic era, but there's no doubt about it that cinematic wrestling, love it or
Oh,
hate it, that is
yes.
that's the Hardys.
That's that's Matt Hardy and Jeremy Borash all the
Yes,
way. Those
in
two.
TNA.
Yes, yes.
But during this wilderness period, the in ring may be getting better, but Doug and Kevin aren't
Oh
watching. A lot of people
no.
aren't watching because you can't find them. Financial instability was always looming. And that's
Hmm.
when, they were for sale and they were pretty much known to be for sale. People were predicting Vince was going to do what he did with WCW. He's going to go pick the
Hmm.
bones, get the library, that sort of thing. Billy Corgan made an attempt. To buy from Dixie Carter and the gang. At that time, uh, Panda Energy was pretty much just footing the bills, and the bills were
Hmm.
really adding up. Um, but then Anthem Sports took over in 2017, and the Anthem takeover is yet another era of TNA. One that is rebranding era because TNA becomes Impact.
It could be like the identity crisis era at that point is when Anthem comes in because they go from TNA to Impact. Weren't they briefly weren't the Jarretts involved again and they were briefly like go global force or at least
Oh yeah,
tightly
they were
associated with
associated, yes, because
yeah
Global Force was kind of its own thing the Jarretts were
yeah
doing,
yeah
and then they sort of started to try to do things together again. That lasted like a
hmm
hot minute, was about it for
right
that.
yeah
I watched. I don't know other than the occasional clip and the occasional show I would catch when I was traveling somewhere. Oh, this is on. It's wrestling. Let's see what
hmm
TNA is doing.
yeah
I really wasn't watching in the early Anthem
mm-mm.
era either.
Same yeah I mean I've been yeah, it's been like the end of that Hogan Bischoff era. The Dixie Carter. By the time Anthem came along, I had honestly checked out there for the longest time with TNA.
And so Anthem, the folks, well, Anthem Sports, also owns Access Television,
Hmm. Right.
and so they put their wrestling company on their cable channel, which makes all the sense in the world. The thing is that there's just not a large coverage area that Access reaches. It's kind of limited in scope, and therefore Impact Wrestling was always limited in um, financial possibilities. And
Hmm.
this really was an era where they tried to start looking, and it was smart. They started looking at sustainability over growth. They were not trying to grow the company; they were just trying to keep it from going under.
Hmm.
And a smaller footprint, they sort of cleaned up the vision of it. It wasn't, trying to be everything to everyone. They realized that they had to kind of take two steps back if they were going to eventually one day take a huge leap forward. And that's
Right.
what this era was, is like, let's right the ship and see
Hmm.
if we can make this thing actually work. And what did we all think at the time? TNA is going to die. This is it. This is the
This
death
is it.
throes. It took
This
way
is it.
longer than we all thought, but this is it. It didn't really happen. They began to have around 2019. Impact had a critical resurgence. You started to hear all this buzz about how, hey, it's hard to find. You need to get access, or you need to start
Uh-huh.
subscribing to TNA Plus. But they're doing some really good things. They have,
They're doing,
and that was Scott D'Amore. They put the
yeah.
creative direction under Scott, and suddenly Scott, who was member of Team Canada, you might recall when he was an on-air talent, but
Yes.
he's a behind-the-scenes guy who has a really good mind for the business. He was really loved too by the talent in TNA, and
Hmm.
this is when you start getting Moose, your Deanna Perrazzo's, Josh Alexander, the Walking Weapon, and they started having matches that people would buzz about, and then you'd have to go find them on YouTube because you weren't watching them at the time. You'd hear that, oh, TNA did this great thing, or the Hardys did this insane thing, and
Hey,
you'd have to go seek it out.
was it Demore that was also responsible for like the whole Sammy Callahan and Tessa Blanchard feud that led to Tessa
Yeah,
becoming like the TNA, world
not the
heavyweight
women's, but
champion?
the actual world champion.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
men's champion. Yes, this is also, and he doesn't get credit for this one, but it was Scott D'Amore as much as it was Tony Khan that started the groundbreaking partnership. At a time when Forbidden Door wasn't a cliche, when it
Oh
really was
yeah.
shocking. Like suddenly the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Rich Swann and the Good Brothers, everybody's
Hmm.
going back and forth between. I mean, yes, now we take it for granted. That's it, what NXT's doing with TNA on the regular. But back then,
Right.
Tony had the kind of first stab at that, and it made some must see TV on AEW television. Again, though,
Hmm.
couldn't have access all the time to what TNA was doing unless you paid extra, get from
Yeah.
behind that paywall. But it was widely praised storytelling and character work during this period under D'Amore. So you kept thinking, hoping that maybe all this goodwill, all this critical praise would lead to a TV show with somebody that we could all watch. Or this is when everyone was landing streaming deals, so we thought, hey, they'll be the one that end up on
Yeah.
TV or something, and we can watch. But then in 2023, when you thought that they were at their height and this relationship with AEW was going to get them to a higher platform, Scott D'Amore is
Hmm.
kicked to the curb, and suddenly
Yeah.
the fans were the diehard TNA guys were, oh, this is it. You know, they're circling the wagons. They're getting rid of Scott. They're cutting
Hmm.
costs. They're cutting talent. There was rumors on tapings being canceled because they couldn't afford to fly the
Hmm.
talent in. We're going to do 3 shows instead of 2 shows, and it just seemed like, okay, no Scott, no, like they had it creatively working. They couldn't make money. This is probably finally, after 20 years, the end of TNA.
Hmm. And there's even the rumors at that time that Demore was ready to actually buy them himself. Was putting together a group of investors, and then he's gone, and so loved by the talent.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of the talent wanted to walk right out the door behind him because they thought the writing was on the wall that they,
Yep.
especially if you were a Scott D'Amore guy or gal,
Right.
that you're probably, and we did see an exodus of some of these folks to AEW or other platforms.
Hmm.
Um, it would have, I'm not going to blame anyone who thought during any of these eras when these things happened that it could be the end of TNA because we thought it. It just
Hmm.
doesn't make sense that they would dodge the bullet as many times as they did. But even when you were creatively on top of the world with Scott and what he was doing, had some buzz, had the AEW relationship, if you couldn't make money
Hmm.
at TV, they finally had to say, hey, this is all great, but this isn't working. So we're going to let Scott and some of these higher cost talent go. It did seem like that could be maybe, a good end as far as, well, at least you
Yeah.
went out creatively on top, but sorry it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, when they started, I mean, they basically prioritized stability over growth. And when they did that and decided to rebrand, let's go back to the beginning. We're going to go back to TNA 2024. That's the sort of the modern era of TNA. We're we're cutting all these costs. We're going to go back to what we are known for.
Hmm.
We're going to have elements of all these things we've done with younger talent, X Division, tag teams, but we're also going to embrace our roots again. We have this legacy. We've managed to be around 20 some years, despite people thinking we were going to be dead, but we're also going to appeal to the nostalgia folks who haven't watched TNA since it was TNA. And they basically blended TNA's classic identity with Impact era like strengths.
Yeah.
The goal was to just reclaim the brand recognition without, repeating all the past mistakes that we've been going over, that the past regimes had. And I really think the turning point in this was after the AEW deal ended and Scott D'Amore left.
Hmm.
Impact and NXT started working together. You're working
Yep.
now with, and in some ways, I mean, let's be honest, can we credit Tony Khan and the existence of AEW for being what ironically kept TNA alive because WWE wanted to have a relationship with a number two that they could quote unquote control as opposed
Right.
to a Tony Khan. Do you think that
Hmm.
Impact would still be maybe um, people having it rumored on its deathbed if it wasn't for the fact that AEW existed?
You know what? TNA may be completely off the radar, if not for, Tony and putting it on WWE's radar.
It is kind of ironic that in order for there to be three major companies, um, it really took AEW coming on the scene to save TNA because there was only one
Hmm.
and then there was two, but it was a wide gap between one and two.
Yes, a
Everyone had
distant
forgotten
two.
about TNA, and people probably would have just, they would have been a footnote in wrestling history had it not been for the boom of
Hmm.
AEW. And ironically, AEW not only made a space for itself, it probably saved TNA in a very ironic fashion just because
Oh yeah.
WWE wanted to invest in something that wasn't. It's kind of like what they did with ECW back in the day, where like,
Yeah,
we'll
that's
help
what I was
you out.
thinking. Yeah,
Yeah.
Vince is subsidizing, Paul, so that they can like feed talent, I guess.
And when you think about the fact that everyone thought that once very creative Scott D'Amore and the great era that he oversaw,
Hmm.
once he was gone, and once the relationship with the AEW didn't actually lead to any financial
Right.
stability, or it was easy to think that maybe it's
This
just
is
not
it.
going to work. It's is it, and instead, the NXT partnership has increased creative.
Oh yeah.
It has increased crowds. TNA is now doing some of the biggest crowd. Actually, the two or three biggest
Hmm.
crowds in TNA's history have been in the last couple of months. Their biggest pay per view buys have been in the last couple of months.
Hmm. What is it? Their Slammiversary was they had record attendance of this year's Slammiversary.
Yes,
Oh.
and now. the payoff is no one's talking about TNA dying anymore.
Mm-mm.
Instead, they're going to return to the mainstream cable TV universe for the first time in a decade. It's been a decade since Doug and I have watched Impact on a regular basis. It's been a
Yep.
decade, I'm sure, since many of you watched Impact on a regular basis. This is the biggest crowd that they are going to be able to reach since the Spike TV heyday of TNA, that we now look back at and realize that, yeah, we maybe should have been paying a little more attention to just how good they were then.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with this AMC deal, they're tier one cable again. Finally, after all these years, millions, tens of millions of homes again.
It'll be interesting to see what that first number is, and then
Right. And the
after
rollout
that,
after that.
curiosity of whether or not it goes down or it sustains. I have a good feeling, though, I really do, that they have, if they've made it this far, why would we at this point in time, when they have all the wins in their sails and momentum at their back, why would we discount them now when they've managed to make it through the eras we didn't think that they could?
Right.
Which leads us to Thursday night. We're excited about it. We're going to have our whole show next week dedicated to our hot takes as to what we think of night one. But before we finish up our talk of the little promotion that just would not lay down and die, despite everyone thinking it would, we have to talk about the history of and the legacy of all of those eras and years. There is quite a few talent that went on to work elsewhere, but there's folks that just would not have the same career had it not been for TNA. Doug, let's talk the top 5 TNA
Mm.
stars in history. Starting with an honorable mention, I will go first and say my honorable mention just because I couldn't find spot for them in my top 5 because it was so darn hard. But I'm going with the beautiful people. The beautiful people, the classic version being Velvet Sky, Madison Rain. I mean, what would TNA have been through all those years without the beautiful people?
Yeah. The beautiful people, an excellent pick. Excellent pick.
I wish I could have
I,
found room for them in my top 5.
good to see Madison Rain
Angelina
and
Love. I'm sorry, I forgot to
Angelina
mention
Love.
Angelina. Yeah,
Yeah. Lacey Von Erich were in the
she was a member
beautiful
for a
people.
while. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's an excellent pick. I've wrestled with that one too. I'm glad you mentioned them in an honorable mention.
Who do you
so,
have? Couldn't make your
so
list.
this was hard. It's heartbreaking that I have to have him as an honorable mention, but I call him out so often on other shows. Desmond Wolfe.
Ah,
Yes, Mr. Nigel McGuinness, Desmond Wolfe, as he was known in TNA. It was just heartbreaking that Nigel had to stop wrestling for and I'm glad he gets to occasionally wrestle now, but health issues have kept him out of the ring for so very long. But he was such a talent, and I was just ready for this guy to ride a rocket to the moon and beyond in
yeah.
TNA.
Well, we all loved him in Ring of Honor, and then
Yes,
you thought that TNA would be a higher platform, and unfortunately, health didn't work out for him.
yeah,
But probably a good choice for an honorable mention, and he
hmm
managed to stay healthy. Um,
yes.
who's your number 5?
So this one will be controversial, but
Uh-oh.
I,
I love controversy.
so she made a name for herself. She made a name for the company, and with Demore's booking, it definitely brought eyes to them. But she's one of those folks who is our own worst enemy. Otherwise, she would probably be in NXT now, if not in AEW, or maybe even on the main roster on Raw or SmackDown. But Tessa Blanchard I don't think you can talk about you know, modern era TNA Impact going back into TNA without mentioning Tessa, because she was it. She was the wrestling it girl for the longest time there in that what 2018, 2019 stint going into the 2020s. And then it
She
just,
was definitely
she,
a big part of that Scott Demore like creative
yes.
resurgence that I only saw bits and pieces of. But I mean, goodness gracious, she should
I,
be a bigger star than what she is if she wasn't her own worst enemy.
yeah. And, that's just it because, we neither one were watching as much as we probably should have been because, well, it was first difficult to find, difficult to catch. Uh, But we weren't, but we still knew who Tessa Blanchard was. We still knew what Tessa was doing with Sammy Callahan and everything that was going on, with her winning titles and just being a beast in the ring.
I am absolutely agreeing with you that Tessa is a major talent in the history of TNA that wouldn't have a name if it wasn't for TNA. That can be said for these next guys, and I do say guys because my number 5 is a tag
Oh,
team, and
I think it might be
and
my number 4.
is it Beer Money?
Okay. No, it's
Okay,
not. Okay.
Beer Money, Robert Roode, James Storm. There was not a better tag team during their era than Beer Money, and they were fun and they could wrestle.
Hmm.
And I know they didn't have the same level of success when they went elsewhere. Um, Bobby had some good, a good run in NXT. Didn't really sustain it so much as he was getting near the end of his career on the main roster, but that time when I think of who would Bobby Roode and I'm not Roode and Storm
Hmm.
be without TNA. I mean, they were the tag team division in TNA for a lot of years.
Yes, yeah, they were great. They really were. I even thinking back to America's Most Wanted, the James
Oh
Storm,
yeah,
tag team before Beer Money. It's like you don't really remember that much about them, other than that's the tag team James Storm was in before Beer Money, right?
and they were good. I
And
remember liking them.
yes, yes. But James Storm is what you remember from America's Most Wanted. I can't even remember the other dude's name right now. Sorry,
I
dude. I
can't.
can't remember.
He was Wildcat. He was
Chris Harris, Wildcat Chris Harris, right? Yes,
Yep.
there we go. But
Old man memories. This was a long time
right.
ago.
This was a long time ago, but another tag team from
I know
that
where you're going
era.
now.
Right here's where I'm going. Motor City Machine Guns, man. Alex Shelley, Chris Saban.
If you're just familiar with them now, then you didn't see the classic era of Motor City Machine Guns. They're still great. No doubt about it.
Yes.
Still great. But man, back then they were as innovative as they come.
Hmm. Yeah, but just
My
it's great that
my number
I was going to say it's just great that we've got tag teams in here because so much of the time these spots go to individuals,
yeah,
but
and
this
male
is
individuals. And
yeah,
so
but this is the depth of the roster that there's been through the years, and I got a feeling that we're just going to blow up these next
oh yeah.
group here.
So your number 4
You're
was the Motor City
right.
Machine Guns. My number 4, Gail Kim. Yes, Gail
Hmm.
Kim was a WWE talent first, but there's no one that can make the argument to me that Gail Kim would be the legend that Gail Kim is if it wasn't for TNA. She really didn't blossom in WWE. She blossomed in TNA and ruled the women's singles division. Her classic
Yes.
matches with Kong, I mean, with the beautiful people, like just with every woman that worked on the roster. Um, Gail Kim is a TNA legend, and along with Madison Rain and the beautiful people, probably the women that deserve the most credit for keeping TNA for those 20 plus years.
Hmm. Kevin, I will see your Gail Kim and raise you an awesome Kong.
Is that your 3?
Yes, yes.
I wanted to find room for her too, so I'm glad you did. I'm so glad you did. I'm glad that we have some differences because there's so many
But
people we see how
but
depth.
they run so parallel though, and I know before we went on air, we were talking briefly about just looking at top 10 ratings throughout the interwebs of TNA talent versus what we've pulled up and put together. It's so bizarre that our people aren't making these lists like I figured they would be. But Awesome Kong, truly an awesome individual. A just beast in TNA. When she became Karma in WWE, if you know her for that, I'm so sorry. I really am. And I agree with everything you said about Gail, because Gail was underused and just stuck in a bra and panties era in WWE Divas era.
I'm glad you mentioned the Divas era and the bra and panties stuff, because when you talk about Kong and Kim and Taryn, Taryn Terrell and like some of the other ladies that were wrestling there at the time, yes, they may have been attractive, but they also were the women's evolution before WWE got involved with the women's evolution.
Yeah, I mean,
you talk about the best matches in TNA history, Kim and Kong are going to be on that list. And women weren't having matches like that in wrestling at the time. They were in TNA, and they don't always get credit for that. I'm going to save us a little bit of time here with my number 3, because you've already mentioned them. Motor City Machine Guns, man. I mean, they were, again, as innovative a team that generation had. And it's a shame that they weren't on a bigger platform for a lot of your casual wrestling fans to see that they were doing what the Hardys did, taking it to the next level in the next generation. They are kind of, you could say that they are the bridge between the Hardys and the Young Bucks. They were that team during that middle era that were doing the high flying innovative spots, and they still can go.
Yes they can.
Doug, I think we're to number 2 on the list. And I have a feeling that 2 and 1 might be easy conversations, because I can't imagine that we're not going to be pretty lockstep on these.
We're probably going to be. So my number 2, the Samoan badass before Samoans were badasses. Joe was the Samoan badass in TNA when you had poor Rosie running around as a superhero, and his brother Roman Reigns wasn't even in. Yeah, he was like trying to be a football player or whatever. No bloodline, no Jacob Fatu, no, we did not even have at this point, or maybe we did. Umaga may have been a Samoan badass around the same time as Joe. I don't really remember, though. I'm thinking maybe not. But Joe, Samoan badass, right there in TNA, truly the Samoan submission machine. This is where he got on my radar and just blew my mind.
So I got him on my radar in Ring of Honor, and I love Ring of Honor, and there's no doubt about it that so much of what this last generation of wrestling has been in the 2000s era of wrestling came on the backs of the work of Ring of Honor. But most people didn't see Samoa Joe until TNA. He's my number 2 also. And I can't say that, I mean, Joe's still a big star and still puts on a great match and is a good promo.
Yes.
But I think prime Samoa Joe would be Ring of Honor into his early run in TNA. And I don't think the Samoa Joe legacy would be what it is if it wasn't for his time in TNA. So I'm in 100% agreement with you on number 2. And I know we said that this was hard, because when you look at the roster of 20-some years of TNA talent, there really is a murderer's row of like, oh, I didn't realize this person was there, or this person was there that long. But where it gets a little easier is when we talk about the all-time.
Yeah.
Samoa Joe has to be near the top of anyone's TNA list. And I have a feeling that there's only one answer for number 1. And if you don't have it, I'm going to argue with you right here.
We're fist fighting in the Walmart parking lot. I got a feeling.
It's Mr. TNA, right? There's only one.
The face that runs the place, man. Before he was ever on SmackDown running the place, before he was the undisputed leader of the Bullet Club, he was in TNA. Talking about AJ Styles, the phenomenal one himself.
And yes, he had a run in Ring of Honor. And yes, afterwards, when things didn't start going his way in TNA, he left and went and remade himself in New Japan and on the Indies. Like AJ Styles, obviously, at this point, has had a very long career in WWE where he has continued to be a standout. He first came on my radar, believe it or not, in WCW. In the dying days of WCW, he wrestled like a couple of matches on like
Yeah.
their Saturday night show as a young kid. AJ Styles has been around a long time, but there
Yes.
would not be the AJ Styles that is the phenomenal one as it was. I mean, his golden years, for better or worse, because they weren't always seen by as many people as should. But if you want to
Hmm.
put a highlight reel of AJ Styles together, half of that reel is going to be TNA highlights, at least.
And AJ, a TNA original that was there from day one all the way through so much of the nonsense until he'd even had enough and said, I can't do this anymore.
I don't know though that anybody on our top five here could be taken out of the equation and TNA make it for as long as they have. But I can
Hmm.
definitely say that these top two, Samoa Joe and AJ Styles, had it not been for their presence for so many years, no matter
Yes.
whether things were going well or not going well for TNA, they could always hang their hat on the fact of, well, we have AJ Styles, we have Samoa Joe, we have the Machine Guns or Gail Kim and Kong, and they were definitely talent that had they not been there, maybe wouldn't have been on WWE's radar because that just maybe wasn't their style at the time. But definitely TNA would not have survived 20 some years if it
Yeah.
wasn't for the phenomenal AJ Styles. That is Mr. TNA, who is returning this Thursday night. So appropriate that the
So
number one
appropriate.
talent in the history of TNA is going to be on their
Hmm.
debut episode of AMC, thanks to the relationship that WWE has with TNA. I can't wait to see that. That's going to be, I'm sure, one of the highlights of the entire broadcast.
Yes, sir. I'm very excited about that.
And with that, Doug, let's hit our
Whew.
finish.
Let's hit our finish. So,
Botch.
didn't get to see a lot of wrestling this week, but what I did say I didn't like, Kevin. Let me
I
just
like
say,
it. Yep.
let me just say, I don't know what the hell Raw was. This whole like Stranger Things Raw nonsense was, but it was terrible. So I'm calling the entire like Raw Stranger Things Raw a botch. Don't know what it was. Didn't like it. Maybe I'm just a grumpy old man. But the show as a whole, just it was a botch.
The whole thing. Well,
The
I'm
whole
kind of
thing, just
almost going for a whole show too, just not the one you're going for. Um,
okay.
it wasn't necessarily affecting the entire show, but we've just talked for 50 minutes about TNA surviving and being a
Hmm.
strong like come up here where they have a real shot at taking over a number two position if you don't watch yourself AEW. And I know things can't be helped, but when you have your lights
Mm.
go out in the middle of Willow's celebration and you're having to like put spotlights on your talent. Yeah, they had a lights out match later on that night, but this was not the lights out match. This was literally the lights just going out. And it happened during the main event also, where they're having to use spotlights to, I know it's probably the venue's fault, and it could happen to WWE. It could happen to anyone. But the fact that these things tend to happen to AEW
Consistently.
it can make them look Bush League. And I guarantee you, with the new money and the partnership, that TNA
Hmm.
is look Bush League. So that was my botch.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. There were good things about Impact, not Impact. My God, we just talked about TNA for an hour. Not Collision, no, Dynamite. That's it. Said old man brain. Because Mox had a really good showing early on in the show, but yes, there were problems there too. I I don't even know if I have a match or performer of the week. I to say kudos to Drew McIntyre for like fumbling and falling out and becoming a champion. Thinking that's more Jacob Fatu. But I really can't pull out a particular stellar match or stellar performer this week because I'm just a grumpy old man, and Raw just started me off sour, and even that lights out match. That's one of those things I think TNA are, oh my God, no, AEW. goes to the well too often for. But this one, especially with Hangman and Swerve, even though they're not opposing each other. I mean, like that women's War Games match or Blood and Guts match that they had not too long ago. I was expecting something like that, and I don't know. I'm just a grumpy old man that's upset with my wrestling this week, but excited for TNA.
I'm going to say I am actually the glass half full Doug this week,
Right.
because Doug, when he isn't grumpy, he will sometimes do his performer and match together, and that's what I'm going to do. My performance of the week is Hiroshi Tanahashi, and then my match of the week is Tanahashi versus Kazuchika Okada, the retirement match at Wrestle Kingdom. It was beautiful, beginning to end. It was so well done. The John Cena of Japan got a John Cena
ace. Yeah,
he got a John Cena style send off. Like Cena, he also went out on his back. Unlike Cena, that wasn't to a younger talent like Gunther, but to his greatest historic rival in Kazuchika Okada. Okada healed it up big, but he couldn't put Tanahashi away. It was only when Okada brought back his babyface side. Instead of the middle finger, he did the Rainmaker pose. Only then was the Rainmaker actually able to finish Okada off, and in a very emotional way. Post-match, we got a send-off where, gosh, I even got teary-eyed, and I had no idea what anyone was even saying, but I didn't understand a word of it. Tanahashi addressed the crowd. There was a cavalcade of special guests that came out for well-wishers, including Jay White, Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, Ibushi, Naito, the Great Muta, a lot of the legends and historic rivals of Tanahashi. Then Shibata came out, and he and Tanahashi took off. Well, Shibata took off his shirt. Tanahashi had just wrestled, and then they proceeded to chop each other until and it ended in a big hug. And then there was a 10-bell salute. And then they put him on like the Zamboni of a thing, and then just pulled the ace around the stadium for something like 20 minutes so everyone could see him. It was a spectacle. If you haven't seen it,
which I have not, but
yeah, I think that would bring the grouchy Doug back to, okay, this is a beautiful wrestling moment, Doug.
Yeah, I'm sure it would, but in the back of my mind, I would be thinking Okada was great, but that should have been Shinsuke. But they screwed New Japan because of AEW with that. So, and by they, I'm talking about Titan or Anthem, not Anthem. Oh my God, we've talked about TNA for too long tonight.
Well, I hate to tell you, Doug, we're going to do it again.
It's okay. It's apparently all I want to talk about now.
I think that you definitely will enjoy the New Japan match when you get a chance to watch it. It was actually for what Tanahashi is capable of at this point in his career. Definitely exceeded expectations. He definitely saved some of his best for last and went out on top. So congratulations to the Ace, my performer of the week. Watch that match and watch TNA this Thursday, because that is what I are doing. And we're going to be back to talk TNA next week, where we will, with you, discuss what we saw and what we thought about it.
Yes, indeed. So until then, go watch some TNA. Get caught up. Get ready for this Thursday.
Let's get ready.
Good night. Thanks for watching. Good night, everybody.